My name is Krishna Mahendrakar, reading economics at Cambridge and an intern with Sarthy Ventures. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Girish Batra, a co-founder of Sarthy with almost 3 decades of experience across sales, marketing, and entrepreneurship. His book, Experiments in Leadership, provides an insight into successful leadership and self-development. He has also delivered a TED Talk called Startup Now, Change the World. In this series, we're going to be discussing some experiences that can only be faced for founders in the early stage of a business and share some new knowledge. Startups face a moment of crisis where they encounter some existential threat. Do they persevere? Do they pivot? Or do they close? When do we know what are the factors of success? So two huge companies that our mind can be drawn to is Flipkart, who in their early days had a lot of financial difficulties, faced competitive pressure from Amazon, and even in their Series B funding round, they nearly ran out of cash, struggled to maintain operations until they secured investment from Tiger Global. A similar story with Google, which is now associated with success, but also faced a lot of problems in terms of scaling its infrastructure.
In the early stage we can define as 2 to 5 years of a startup journey. The
Yeah.
near-death experiences are much more than for a stable corporation. Like COVID made 9 out of 10 organizations go through near-death experiences. Yeah, many persevered, few shut down who were on weak foundations, and COVID was a black swan event. So, like this, there are black swan events caused by external circumstances. There are at times black swan events caused by internal circumstances. Could be founder death, leaving, could be key customer deciding to discontinue business with you. So all these happen in a organization's life cycle. For a startup, these are more frequent than it's for a established organization. So if you
Mhm.
look at Microsoft, Bill Gates, since early days, was paranoid about having at least a year's salary in the bank for his team. So if Microsoft has zero revenues, they should be able to pay salaries for a year to the team, or all costs, including rent and everything. So this was kind of preparing the organization to be anti-fragile. So if it's hit by a major crisis, it should be able to tide through it. And that's like preparing our organization for near-death experiences. Not all organizations or founders have that luxury to prepare for near-death experiences. Where will they get 1 year's of salary to pay their employees with zero revenues, right? So therefore, they have to find other options, and at times even decide not to persevere, right? Which is kind of shutting down this kind of industry. So cash is the first factor which a startup should consider while they are preparing for near-death experiences. The second is, of course, the customer. So if they are solving a problem which the customer wants them to solve, customer will surely pay for it, give their eyeballs for it, right? So the Google story which you mentioned, so Google knew that they were solving an unsolved problem. Okay, they were not charging the customer for it. The revenue model came in maybe in the fourth year or fifth year, where they were able to monetize their idea through advertising and eyeballs. So as long as the customer is getting value from your idea today or tomorrow, you should be able to monetize it. Until that time, you have to sustain and keep your investors in sync with your long-term vision of making money from your idea.
Mhm. And so, related to that point about burning cash, we know another success story, of course, with Paytm, who in their original days also faced a lot of liquidity challenges. And then they received, a critical $1.4 billion investment from SoftBank. And that's now allowed it to dominate the digital payment space in India.
Mhm.
So, in terms of sustainable cash management, how do you think a startup should go about evaluating whether the cash burn rate is in fact unsustainable?
So I always consider a founder should be thinking perpetuity. He should not be thinking the next funding round, because the next funding round is never a guarantee. There may be various factors which may cause that funding round. There may be various factors which should not cause that funding round to happen. So if you have to be winning in the perpetual game, you have to ensure that your cash burn is on a down and your revenue growth is on a high. So as long as these two trajectories are maintained, where your revenue is growing maybe 3x, 5x than your decline in your cash burn is in the same 3x, 5x. That is the trajectory is right. And tomorrow, if investor money comes in, you can capture newer markets, newer TGs, or you can sustain with existing TGs and existing markets if the investor money is delayed or if it doesn't come in. So investor money only changes the trajectory, and you are avoiding near-death experiences due to that. So pivots are helpful in avoiding near-death experiences when the runway is reasonably big, maybe 2 years, 3 years. Then only the pivot is logical. In fact, I recommend in my book also that if you believe that your runway is short and your current value proposition is not working, it's better to shut down and return whatever little money you have to your investors. At least you are saving your credibility instead of doing wasteful pivoting when you don't have money to sustain that pivot.
How important do you think it is to have a well-developed network of, say, for example, mentors, advisors, when a startup is in its early stage and particularly during a crisis?
It is quite high. In fact, startup near-death experiences was avoided because existing investors, mentors, well-wishers supported the startup in their crisis mode, right? And if they also withdraw, that gives more proof to the outside world that things are not right here. Right? So outside world will run away faster than your inside folks, which you are mentioning in terms of mentors, well-wishers, early investors who supported you in the initial journey. So you should keep them close. They are very valuable in crisis/near-death experiences.
Now we know an insight into when startups should persevere or what are the signs that they can continue. Should we consider the flip side of when should a startup give up and what are some of the major signs of failure? Some two big examples that we can think of are, of course, Stayzilla and WeWork.
SoftBank suffered a severe reputation loss because of WeWork's bankruptcy, right? They had given significant amount of debt to WeWork. In Stayzilla's case, also the investors took a back foot, and the founder had to go to jail because he was having check bounce and these cases. So it's painful. So if you don't decide to give up at the right time, then the extended period is really, really painful. At times, it's quite heavy on your personal reputation, your mental health, right? So very important to have a mirror conversation or have a hard conversation with folks who respect you and who respect what you are doing, and you respect them also. It's good to have hard conversations with folks around you as to what you are doing. Is it really creating value for the customer first, and then the other stakeholders? And if not, what are the other options? And of course, shutting down is one of the options on the table, which should be considered every 6 months by a startup who's going through crisis, right? Every 6 months, maybe even more frequent, is what is shutting down a good option should be the question a founder should be asking themselves if they're going through regular crisis.
We know with Stayzilla, for example, that they persevered when they really should have given up sooner, considering the mounting problems that they had. So,
Sure.
if we were to consider this flip side, do you think there are some examples of startups that gave up too early and think could have persevered further?
Of course, there are, because at times you are solving a problem which the world wants to be solved, but maybe your timing was early, right? So we all know that Netflix waited for almost 10 years for the bandwidth to support video on demand, right? So did YouTube. So there were so many others ahead of YouTube who gave up, and YouTube was the first video sharing platform which became successful because the timing was wrong. If these startups would have persevered similar to YouTube, then we may have had more YouTubes. Because when 4G came in, 3G and 4G came in, that's the time when bandwidth started supporting video. For that, video was stuck, right? So you have to also have the timing factor in mind, and that's where perseverance helps. If timing is against you in terms of technology, you should be persevering. And when the timing supports, and then your idea takes off because of the timing part of your game. So when it's external, like timing or technology, then it's kind of, we should look at that perseverance piece much more closely. That should we persevere in this game or should we give up?
That's really interesting. So you had mentioned earlier as well, one of the internal issues then that, as I understand, maybe is something that you have more control over. And one of those things was an unsustainable burn rate. So
Mhm.
one of the evidence says that startups with burn rates exceeding 2.5% are 60% more likely to fail.
Mhm.
So, in terms of burn rate, do you think for startups there is a number, or can we quantify when a startup is excessive in its burn rate, or is this something that's more intuitive as to when to keep going and when to give up?
So I consider burn rate good only if it's generating more value than you're burning. So if
Mhm.
I know that every new TG or new market I enter, I'll be burning money for the first 1 year and I'll be making money. I'll be net positive by say month 13, month 14. So every new market or new TG, the burn is planned. But if the
Mhm.
burn is all across TGs, across markets, then I'll be scared. And therefore, I'll relook at the burn and start shutting down my businesses or verticals or TGs which are causing the maximum burn. Right. So two scenarios. One is you've got profitable verticals slash businesses slash markets, and you've got unprofitable, and therefore the burn is coming from the unprofitable. But you have a path to profitability for those unprofitable markets. But if all your TGs, all your verticals, all your markets are burning, that's very tough situation, and therefore you have to cut down, right? And always scaling up is easy, scaling down is painful. There are employee layovers. There's so many decisions you have to take, and that's so much negative energy or energy spent inside versus that energy could have gone to customer facing activities. Should be very careful of where the burn is going.
One of the things that I think is often overlooked in the desire to be successful for a lot of startups is just how demanding starting your own business is. And you, of course, have enjoyed success with your own startup. But when startups are going through this phase of something like a near-death experience, how do you think you can balance the emotional and psychological toll on the founding team when you have to make decisions like this of do I keep going or do I shut down often every day?
Yeah, so it's a tough position to be in, Krishna. It is not an easy position to be in, and that's where grounded founders who have a strong understanding of the business, founders who have a strong understanding of self or why they are doing what they are doing. These three, four factors will help founders guide their thoughts and energy towards the right decision. But it's never easy, right? And the world is unpardonable on failure. As the accolades you would have won in your success journey, you'll get 10 or maybe 100 times more brickbats in your failure journey, Sony, and it's not easy. But
Mhm.
it's like founders enjoy these spaces, uncharted waters, and they believe that that's where the change or the changing the world kira comes in, right? So if you are wanting to change the world, this is all a part of the uh, dues you have to pay for doing that.
Mhm. And of course, we know already how tough it is on the founder. And as an individual, you have to be very psychologically strong, as you've mentioned.
Mhm.
But in terms of maintaining, for example, the morale of the whole team, that's another
Mhm.
thing that they have to weigh up. So
True.
how do you think that they can do that? How do they maintain both morale and motivation when a company is in a time of, say, financial or operational crisis?
Yeah. So actually, founders mis missteps are the worst during periods of crisis. And the worst misstep is a facade of all is well when in reality there's a huge storm just a few hundred meters away, right? So that
Mhm.
facade makes things more painful for everyone. At this time, the characteristic which should help founders is being brutally honest with your first degree, at times even second degree of folks, so that they know the crisis equal to how you know the crisis, and they are aware of the skeletal plan how you are going to pass through this storm slash crisis, right? So they may give you opposite ideas, which you will have to consider because maybe someone uh, one layer, two layers below has a better plan than you have to wait through the crisis. But every bit of intelligence or support is valuable. Every bit of negativity or sarcasm or lack of confidence on the path is detrimental to this coming out of the storm journey.
As we now approach the end of our presentation, we've discussed some very valuable insights into, when should a startup persevere, when should they give up, and these are things that in the life cycle of startups is, a new insight that we've looked into and provided today. So I'd like to thank you very much for your time today, Mr. Batra. And is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, that's it, Krishna. It's a really wonderful topic. And the more founders understand these, it'll help them be slightly more prepared when they face these real-time experiences. So thank you for having me.